Module 4, Lesson 4, we're going to look at the relationship between division and subtraction in the same way that we looked at the relationship between multiplication and addition in Lesson 3. So we're starting off with a table in which we are building subtraction expressions from the original division equation and then showing in a tape diagram how that works. So if we start with 12 divided by x equals 4, what we're really doing is subtracting x from 12 4 times, which will give us 0. So the repeated subtraction is going to give us 0 at the end, because when you take things away, if you take equal groups away, we want to know how many equal groups you can take before you end up with nothing left over. And then in the tape diagram, we started with 12, and we found that we had to subtract 3 4 times before we could get to 0. There are 3 units in each group. So x is equal to 3. Please notice in the repeated subtraction problem, the number 4 isn't in the subtraction problem. The 4 represents the number of times that we subtracted x from 12 before we got to 0. So if we have the problem 18 divided by x equals 3, we would want to be subtracting 18 minus x 3 times. And at the end, we want to end up with 0. Notice the relationship. We're subtracting x 3 times. Then in our tape diagram, we need to have 18, and x will have to be 3, or will have to be 6. Because if we subtract 6, that'll give us 12, 6 more will give us 6, and 6 more will give us 0. So the value of x is going to be 6. And so you can see there are 18 in the tape diagram. And in order to have equal groups, I had to group them off in 6 pieces at a time. So 18 minus 6 minus 6 minus 6 will equal 0. X is equal to 6. In the next 2 problems, we're following the same concept. If we start with 35, and we have to subtract something 5 times, as long as we know our multiplication facts, we know that 7 subtracted 5 times will give us 0. So y is equal to 7. And y, of course, is the number that we're going to circle in our tape diagram. And I'm going to leave that for you to draw 35 boxes, same way with the 42. But in the same way that we did the first 2, you'll draw the boxes, 35 boxes, and then you'll circle 7 at a time. And there will be 5 circles of 7. And then in our final problem, we have 42 divided by z equals 6. So we're starting with 42. And we need to subtract z 6 times. Which will equal 0. Yeah, I should have changed this up here. Let me pause and change. So when we subtract z 6 times, we circle 6 equal groups on our group of 42 that you will draw. We'll find that there should be 7 in each group. If we're going to make 6 equal groups, each group must have 7 in it. So z is equal to 7. In the second table, you'll notice that the numbers are the same. Our division equation is exactly the same, but the way we're going to represent it will be the opposite. So what we're doing is starting with our starting number, and then we're going to subtract the quotient, the ending number, until we get to 0, and our x, again, is going to represent the number of times that we subtract 4. So if we start with 12, and we circle groups of 4, we find that we have to subtract 4 3 times in order to get to 0. So x is equal to 3, the number of times that we circled 4 groups. If we have 18, and we're going to circle groups of 3, each group of 3 then would have 6 in it. So you can see in each case that our starting number is then repeatedly subtracted by our ending number until we get to 0. In the case of 18, 18 minus 3, we had to subtract it 6 times to get to 0. 35 had to be subtracted by 5 7 times in order to get to 0, and 42 had to be subtracted by 6 7 times in order to also get to 0. Then in exercise 2, we're going to take that information and put it into words. If 12 divided by x equals 3, how many times would x have to be subtracted from 12 in order for the answer to be 0? And x would have to be subtracted from 12 3 times in order for the answer to be 0, which looks like and that would mean then that x is equal to 4. If 36 is being subtracted by f 1, 2, 3, 4 times, if we're going to write a division sentence for this repeated, we would write 36 divided by f equals 4. And then f would be equal to 9. So we subtract 9 4 times from 36 and we'll end up with 0. And then if 24 divided by b equals 12, which number is being subtracted 12 times in order for the answer to be 0? Well, b is being subtracted 12 times, and b is equal to 2. So in the problem set, remember the difference between the two tables that we had earlier in the lesson, and please repeat that same process in the two tables that you're looking at in your problem set.